everybody. Hey, what? Where's Madisyn? I don't see her. Oh no, was she caught in the belly of this whale too? Help! Well, it's Friday, February 19th, someplace in the world. And today is our Friday feature interview. Well, I really don't know where Madisyn is. The last time I saw her, she was interviewing Rob Burns. Who's that, you may ask? Well, Rob Burns is a fascinating character. He was formerly a sports reporter for the Aberdeen Daily World. And before he quit, he took on the role as sports editor. He quit that job a few years ago to become a teacher. He now teaches at Wishkah High School in Wishkah. Not only that, though, but Mr. Burns also is the Aberdeen High School swim coach. So sit back, relax, get comfortable, and watch this first part of Madisyn's interview with Rob Burns. I think you'll agree with me. He's fun to listen to.
Please state your name and where you live.
Okay. My name is Rob Burns, and I live in Hoquin.
Before I start asking questions about your jobs, I'd like the Acosta students to know a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Vallejo, California, which is in Northern California. It's right on the tip of the San Francisco Bay. I grew up there. My whole family grew up there, and I have lots of family in the Bay, San Francisco Bay Area, and the Sacramento Valley and the foothills.
That must have been a big weather change for you.
This is a big weather change for me. Yes, it was. My first year here, I guess, my first winter, it rained for 95 straight days. And I thought, what did I get myself into? I really did question what was I doing here, but I'm glad I'm here.
I like Grace Harbor too. It's nice and cool.
I would like a little more heat though sometimes. When it's got a little more heat, I like those hot days.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I do. I have two younger brothers. My oldest younger brother is John. He is a music teacher at in the Stockton and Lodi school districts in the Central Valley. That's basically south of Sacramento. He does very well with that. He's kind of the one, he's one of the few teachers in the family. And my youngest brother, Michael, he works on a farm in the Sacramento foothills. He's he's got a family farm out there.
Did you have any funny or embarrassing stories about something that happened to you in elementary school?
Oh yes, yes I do. Probably for the first, I think from first grade to fifth grade, I got called by my middle name, and this is a weird one. Actually, this is a shortened, it's a shortened middle name. So William, which was my dad's name. Now, whenever I was in sports there in elementary school or in any plays or anything, they would say, and finally in first place in the 40-yard jam was William Burns. No, it was me. It was me. It was, so the school and everybody called me by my middle name. It finally it just, for some reason, that's what they remember. They remember my dad, but they didn't remember. They just called me William. So I was William for like 4 or 5 years in elementary school. So it was embarrassing because sometimes I would forget that that's what everyone would call me, and I'd go, "Who are they talking to? Oh, that's right, it's me." Okay, so there you go.
When you were younger, what did you want to be?
Oh, when I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut. I got to see the space shuttle when it first took off. I saw, I was very much influenced by the night stars, and I wanted to go to the moon. I wanted to go to Mars. I basically wanted to be, one of those, astronauts that just, took off and got to explore all the stars and all the planets. And so I wanted to be an astronaut.
You were chasing some big dreams there.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was. Unfortunately, I wasn't very good at math, so my, I think, my interest in space pretty much just limited to Star Wars and Star Trek and sci-fi, that sort of stuff.
Where did you go to high school?
Where did I go to high school? I went to high school at, I finished. Yeah, it's another story, but I'll go through, I'll keep it simple. I finished at St. Patrick's St. Vincent High School, a very small parochial Catholic school in Vallejo. I played football, and I was a swimmer. So,
What was your favorite subject in school?
the final bell. The final bell. I did not have a favorite subject in high school. I did not like high school very much. Yeah, so that was probably another reason why I never made it as an astronaut too. I just didn't like school very much. I did go to junior college and the university, but I didn't like high school very much. I just wanted out. So the last bell was my favorite subject.
Were you involved in any extracurricular activities in high school?
Oh yes, I think I just mentioned it pretty quickly. I played football at St. Pat's. The 1 year that I was the year I was on the football team, we went 11-0, won one of the California sectional titles. It's not necessary. It's since California is so big, they split everything up into sections, and so at the time when I went to high school back in the late 80s, in other words, the Middle Ages, yeah, the long, way too long ago, there was no state championship. So you went about as far as your section. We won a section title, and I think a magazine voted our team as like a mythical state champion that year. So that was a lot of fun. And I also was a swimmer. That was my main sport. I was a swimmer, and so I swam for 2 years. And I did go to the state meet my senior year at St. Pat's, and I did quite well there. So I did sports. You know what? I was just kind of, yeah. I think I did sports. There wasn't really much else I really was much interested in.
Where did you go to college or colleges?
I went to junior college, Solano Community College, which is in Fairfield, a little short drive away. I went there so that I could swim and play water polo. So I got to play water polo for 3 years, actually 3 summers, and then 2 collegiate years. And then from there, I went to Sacramento State in Sacramento, Cal State University in Sacramento. I swam there for a year, and then the program was folded. So I got to be in a Division I program. We did quite well, but there was just no money. And from there, I stayed there and graduated with a bachelor's in journalism and a strong emphasis in English and English literature.
Tell us about your family. Are you married?
Yes, I am. I am married to Christine. She's a native Hoquiamite. Her family is quite big here. Her dad, Hank Bilderback, was a longtime music teacher and choir teacher, and also an actor in the Driftwood plays. So he's kind of famous, and that's my wife Christine's dad. And we have one daughter. She's a sophomore at Hoquiam.
Okay. Now here's some job questions, starting with the newspaper. You
Okay.
being a newspaper reporter.
A
How did
former newspaper guy.
Yes. How did you use the things you learned in ELA classes in your job as a newspaper reporter?
I learned that grammar and spelling was super important. You have no idea how many phone calls you'll get if you misspell a name, if you misspell a word or a headline, people notice it. And that's always kind of a fun thing. Maybe what you should do is in your ELA classes, maybe pick up a newspaper every once in a while and see if they misspell a word in a headline. And then circle it and then give it to your teacher. And I go, hey, that's a misspell. Give me some extra credit. That would be really good. So I learned quite a bit about grammar and story structure, sentence structures. I mean, really the nuts and bolts basics. That's what you need when you're going to be a reporter. You got to know how to write. You have to know how to write.
Mhm. You were a former reporter and sports editor for the Daily World. Did you work for any other newspapers? If so, where?
Okay. I worked at my hometown newspaper in Vallejo, the Vallejo Times-Herald. That was the first job I ever had as a newspaper reporter. Actually, I started as a clerk. What I would do is I would come in around 6 o'clock at night and I would answer phone calls and take sports calls. And so I did that for, you know what, technically I did that for pretty much for almost 30 years. I was on the phone taking sports calls from coaches. So that's, I learned from there. Probably the largest newspaper I worked for was the Sacramento Bee. I worked there as a sports clerk and correspondent when I was in college, and I kind of bounced around. I went to about 6 or 7 newspapers, and I learned a lot from all of them. So, and then I was at the Daily World for, boy, about 18 to 20 years. About 18 to 20 years. When I moved up here, that's when I was at the Daily World. So,
Describe what it's like to work in the newsroom on a Friday or Saturday evening as coaches are calling in their scores.
okay. Just imagine for you. I'm going to try and put it to where you get this, Madisyn, okay? So you have homework, right?
Yes.
Okay. You have deadlines, in other words, due dates for your homework, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine getting 1 month's worth of homework in one night, and you have to have it done by the end of the night. That's a Friday night phone call session on at the Daily World. Lots of phone calls, lots of quick writes, and it's just a lot of frantic energy. And then there's a lull, and then a lot of frantic energy, and then a lull. And then you have to take all that, put it, lay it out, put it in print, proofread it, send it.
That sounds painful.
Uh, you know what? Sometimes it was. Sometimes it was. Sometimes I come home with headaches, and sometimes I would come home at like 1 a.m. and just be so wired up that I wouldn't really be able to go to sleep until maybe 4 a.m. I think I remember that. You just sit there and you're just trying to just calm yourself down. So I would read, I would listen to music, I would watch movies. I watched a lot of movies. But yeah, until you just felt just tired enough to go to sleep.
How much time did you have to gather scores and recaps of the games, write, edit, and get the stories to print on those hectic evenings?
Sometimes, Madisyn, I only had about maybe 15 minutes, especially when the closer you get to deadline, the closer you have to hit it. You can't miss. That's the one thing about newspapers and working on a small paper. You can't miss a deadline. You can't miss a due date. And so, if you get a phone call right at the very end that you needed, you have to get the information, write it, proof it, send it, just like that. And I think probably the fastest I've done on a story that was of importance. I think if I remember right, it's a lot of those were track coaches and track, results in the spring, from state and from, district and, regional tournaments. Sometimes you don't get those until the bitter end because they'll drive home. They'll drive home and there's nothing you can do when they're driving home. You just have to wait for them to find a spot to call. So there you go.
You covered some big sporting events. What were some of the most memorable games and why?
Madisyn, you get to pick. Do you want me to pick local events or do you want me to pick like national events?
Whatever you want.
Whatever I want. Okay. I got to cover Super Bowl 40 in Detroit. That was the Seattle Seahawks' first ever Super Bowl. I got to cover that. And I did that in a round trip of about 28 hours. Yeah, I left on a red-eye flight on a Saturday night, Sunday morning from SeaTac, got to Detroit, got to rest, covered the game, basically attended the game, covered it, went back to a hotel that I was only there for a few hours for, right, wrote it up, took a nap, went back to the hotel, flew home. And I was back, I was back into work, late Monday morning. So it was about 28 hours.
So that would be like 7 in the morning to 11 the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that was very memorable. I was very fortunate that the Daily World was able to get credentials to cover Seahawk games. The Seahawks, you know what? I didn't grow up as a Seahawk fan. I grew up as a San Francisco 49ers fan. So, but I love football. I love football. I really do. That's one of my favorite sports. Love football, love baseball. Mr. I knows about baseball. But yeah, that's, I was fortunate. I got to cover some really good stuff there. And you know what? That was memorable, but the most memorable was covering a lot of the people on the harbor. And some of the best stories I've written are stuff that was, on the fly, never thought I would even think that would turn into a story. And all of those were local. So that's why I asked if you wanted local or national ones, because I got a lot of local ones.
I think you might like this question. Do
Okay.
any local sporting events that you've covered stick out as a memorable event?
Yes, I do. For Acosta, I got to cover the boys basketball team when they I think that run a couple years ago was phenomenal. That was a great team to cover. Loved covering that team. Them coming out in the old school red blazers that they had. That was a lot of fun. I got to be a fly on the wall when Montesano football won one of their state championships at the Dome. That was, I was there at 6 a.m. and I got to basically follow them around all day. And that was probably one of my most favorite stories I've ever written right there. I've covered baseball, titles, but I got to see some really good stuff. I got to, I learned just how tough the Acosta cross country track is. The course, which goes around your school, the elementary school and the high school and everything. That is a tough course. And I really enjoyed covering those. I really did. I enjoyed watching Miss Rasmus's games when she was coaching. Loved covering, the football team. Mr. Goodrich, loved covering his wrestling wrestlers. It was a lot of, there's too many to count. You know what? Yeah, it was too much fun. I really loved it. And it was an honor to have been a part of all of that.
We mentioned that you were the former sports editor for the Daily World. What was it like to take over for Rick Anderson, someone who spent so much time working on the paper and covering local events?
If Rick Anderson wasn't there, I don't know if I would have stayed as long as the Daily World as I did. He was a mentor. He was a good friend, and I learned a lot from him. And I learned so much history. He was Rick Anderson is a harbor treasure, and we should protect those that have that know the history on the harbor. And yeah, I think the world of him. And he he's someone that I look up to even still today. He still helps me out even afterwards. So
Describe the difference between being a reporter and being the editor.
being the reporter is more fun because you go out, you cover it, you write it, and then you can go home. If you are the editor, you got to make all the decisions. You got to look at all the stories. You have to make all the cuts. You got to design all the pages. There's a lot more work being an editor. And the difference is, a reporter can do his stuff, get it done, and then he can release it. It's like, okay, that's it. That's all I can do. But an editor has to be the one that just meticulously takes everything and puts it all together. So it's a lot more responsibility as an editor.
The newspaper industry is struggling as they get fewer subscribers and advertisers. And there's a move to online. How do you think the move to online journalism is changing the profession?
I think it needs to adapt. You got to go where the readers are, and people read online a lot. The physical print, the paper, it's a finite source. It's all the trees. We're blessed in Grace Harbor. I mean, Madisyn, you've probably been to Lake Quinault and you see all those trees, when you drive up there, right?
Yep.
Yeah. That's, what? Paper, newsprint comes from those trees. And that's a finite source. If we don't take care of the resources and we don't take care of it to where everybody can still have jobs and such, we're going to lose it. And so for newspapers, that is a next step. They have to go where the readers are. And for a lot of people now, as we move to a digital age, it's going to be online. And so we have to adapt. We got to adjust.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Make sure you join us next Friday as Madisyn continues her interview with Rob Burns. Well, I'll see you Monday, but before I do that, I've got to remind you, be a good kid. Do the right thing. See you next week. Bye.